Hey everyone, let's get started. Welcome to Behind the Scenes and Into the Past on Utah's military installations. I'm Elizabeth Hora. I'm public archaeologist at the Utah State Historic Preservation Office. And today I'm welcoming a bunch of experts to our virtual brown bag. So these folks will spend the next hour or so taking you behind the scenes so that you can see the archaeology and historic preservation work that really very few people have access to. The reasons for that, access, they vary. Some of these sites are in restricted areas, and other times these places are undergoing renovation. But either way, I know that I'm about to see something new, and so I'm excited. You guys probably are too. So let me introduce our panelists, and I'll introduce them in order of presentation, and then we'll dive right in. So first up is Maia London. She is archaeologist with the Utah National Guard, and she'll be talking to us about renovations at Camp Williams. After Maia, we'll hear from Anya Kitterman and Elizabeth Skilrala from Hill Air Force Base about some of the cool technology they've been cooking up. And last but not least are Aaron Clark and Camille Dine to let you know the good things that are going on at the Hill Aerospace Museum. Before we dive into all of that, I just want to talk a little bit about how you guys can participate in today's presentation. So this is a Zoom webinar, which means that your video and audio are automatically turned off. But at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A panel. You can use this at any time to ask questions of our presenters. Our presenters will be able to see your questions once you send them, and they can decide whether they want to answer it live on air or if they would like to respond within the Q&A panel themselves, and you'll be able to see who sent the response to. So we're going to do our best to leave no question unanswered. We'll also have our chat panel where you can interact with not only our panelists, but with other audience members on Zoom as well. If you're on Facebook Live, please feel free to use the comment section there. I'll be monitoring that and checking. So if you've got any comments, questions, reactions, I'll be sure to bring them in here to the Zoom space for our panelists. So we will make sure that there's a period at the end for questions and answers. And if you would like, you can take yourself off mute and ask your question in your own voice. That's my favorite way to hear questions. And so I highly encourage it. Please use the raise hand button on your lower panel to let us know that you would like to have your microphone turned on to use this option. So that ought to do it for housekeeping. So we've got a really packed program, so let's get started. First up is Maia London. So take it away, Maia.
All right, everybody, we'll get the PowerPoints pulled up here. So good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay, Elizabeth? We're good?
You sound good.
Perfect. So my name is Maia London, and I am a culture resource manager for the Utah National Guard. Let's go to the next slide. So we're going to be talking about a couple different things today. Everything is at Camp Williams, so I'll kind of give you an idea of where that is in a minute. But first, we're going to talk about the renovation of the Officers Club at Camp Williams, which is one of our really awesome historic buildings. And then we are going to talk about some other interpretation projects we have going on. Next slide. So first, to start us off with the Officers Club, I wanted to give you an idea of where it's located and where Camp Williams is. So the Utah National Guard has land throughout Utah, but our main training area is at Camp Williams, which is in Bluffdale, kind of by Point of the Mountain, Traverse Mountains area. We have gorgeous views of Salt Lake and Utah valleys. The county line straddles in between Camp Williams. We can see, the Jordan River, Utah Lake. It's a really great place to be, 180 views. You can see here a 1943 photo of the Officers Club, and that sits right on the eastern edge of Camp Williams. And then the left photo is from the 1930s. That's behind the Officers Club. So you can really see, the Jordan River Valley, the Traverse Mountains. It's a great view, a great place to have such a picturesque building with this awesome view. We'll go to the next slide. So the Officers Club was constructed in 1934. You can see a photo here on the left. During construction, you can see them putting up the stone walls that we'll talk about here in a minute. So construction began on February 20th, 1934, and lasted for several months with a formal dedication and open house on October 27th of the same year. So really, it took less than a year to build um, or to construct this building that took a lot of time and effort and materials that weren't being put into a lot of other structures at camp. They used local architects and masons, carpenters, ironworkers to construct this. It was a totally local project. You can see in this left photo kind of quarter built stone walls. That's not just a facade, that is full stone walls that, the whole building is made out of that. It's not just certain sections, it's the whole thing. So they mined the stone, sand, and gravel all from the Camp Williams area, and 327 tons of stone were used in the building. So that can kind of give you an idea, along with some of these other photos we're going to see, how much effort and time it would take to construct this. Because although the training area at camp isn't very far away from this area, in the 1930s, with the technology and tools they had, this is quite the feat of construction. So now we call the building the Officers Club, but originally it was called the Hostess House, and it provided a social hall and gathering place for the mothers, wives, and sisters, and the sweethearts of the men stationed at Camp Williams, because at this time, women were not allowed to join the military; it was just men. So this building gave these people a place to kind of have a community and somewhere to go when their family members were training or were deployed. So even though the Officers Club was constructed in 1934 during the Great Depression, like I said, they put a lot of time and effort and high quality materials into building this structure. And that wasn't, really seen with a lot of other of the buildings that were constructed at camp during that time. So if you go to the next slide, here's a couple historic photos of some buildings and an aerial shot of Camp Williams in the 1930s to give you an idea of what it looked like when the Officers Club was constructed. So if you look at the aerial shot on the left here, the Officers Club is kind of in the upper left-hand corner. You can see below the Officers Club is a historic ditch, and below that is the Jordan River. So you can really see it's perched on the edge of this hill. Compared to now, in the 1930s, the Officers Club, Camp Williams was pretty small footprint. It's much larger now. We have a lot more buildings. But back then, you can see kind of the darker grassy area is the parade field. That is still at Camp Williams today. It's a rectangular shape instead of kind of a half moon. So they made it a little bit larger, but that is still there. To the south of that, below the parade field, there were a lot of tents and temporary structures. And that was mainly what made up camp in the 1930s. In the upper right-hand corner is a photo of the recreation hall that was built in 1928. That was kind of the first permanent structure at Camp Williams, and then things kind of started to roll from there. Below that is a photo of some temporary tent structures that were put up. They did cement pads and, some timber, but that was about it. So really, this is the time when, in 1935, the Works Progress Administration funded construction of some more permanent features at camp, like an airfield, a water system, swimming pool, and rockline irrigation ditches to bring it from, a temporary training area and camp to, okay, we're going to be here more permanently and use this space on a full-time basis. So we can go to the next slide. So the Officers Club was listed on the National Register of Historic Places on April 1st, 1985. And what that means, for those that aren't familiar, is the building is associated with, Utah military history, National Guard and Camp Williams history. And it also has these really distinctive features that make it stand out from other buildings on camp and other buildings in the area. So here we can see some photos from late 1930s. The photo on the left shows kind of the southeastern side of the building. Originally, it was constructed with an open porch. You can see these large, grand windows overlooking Jordan River. Now that's an enclosed porch, but we still have those large windows in place. The rock wall surrounds the property also, that is still there. And you can really see here just the amount of rock and masonry work that was put into this building. And that's also evident in the right-hand photo, which was taken in kind of the main gathering space, the lounge of the building. There's quite a few different fireplaces, but this one here is the main fireplace. The architects were Masons, Freemasons, and so there are Masonic symbols throughout the building in this rock work that we can see. And the chandelier, we'll talk about those in a minute, but just really distinctive, eye-catching, one-of-a-kind construction and just style that we don't really see a lot of other places in Utah. And if we go to the next slide, we can move on to some more modern photos to really show the colors, the materials. I took these just last year. Like I said, we have 4 stone fireplaces throughout the building. The left photo here is the largest fireplace in that main gathering room. You can kind of see the gavels, Masonic symbols kind of going up the vertical sides of the fireplace. We also have, in the middle and left photos, you can see chandeliers. And these are going the length of that main room. They are constructed out of German bayonets and non-commissioned officer sabers that were brought home from the First World War. So the fact that they incorporated these into the chandeliers and they're still here today really ties in the history of the Guard with the history of the building for people that are visiting it today, and it's really, really cool. Moving on to the upper right-hand photo, this is in what we call the bar room. And these are unit crests that are inlaid in the ceiling, essentially. And they each have a crest for a unit or a symbol that represents Utah. So this is another way that it ties in, the history of the Guard with the history of the building. And it goes throughout the history just to show the different units and how the units have changed and grown throughout the history of the Utah National Guard. All of these features, they're really prominent, and the building is currently used for promotions, weddings, presentations, retirements. It gets a lot of use, and we're really, really happy that it's still here and in such good condition. Next slide. Which leads with all this use, this building is almost 100 years old. So we started to realize it needed to be updated and renovated so that we could keep using it into the future. So in October of 2021, just this last year, we started a renovation with our construction office. This renovation is expected to last well into this year. We're taking our time, making sure that we're doing it right to preserve this building. Before we started the renovation, we worked with the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, to make sure that we are incorporating, certain standards for rehabilitation, making sure that we are preserving these character-defining features and characteristics that make this building awesome and beautiful, while also being able to update it and make it useful into the future. So you can see here in the right-hand photo, this is that same main lounge room that has the chandeliers and the large fireplace. So most of the building, the flooring had been replaced many, many times. It was mismatched. It wasn't original. So we took out the flooring. You can see here, all the floor joists are exposed. We were able to reinforce those, install new, electrical, air vents, all this kind of stuff that you don't see, but makes a building last for quite a bit longer and last into the future for all this use that it's getting. We were also able to preserve the hearth, the fireplace, that's inlaid stone and original. The fireplace, you can kind of see some of the soot on there. That'll all be cleaned up by a professional stone restoration company. And then if you look to both sides of the fireplace, to the left and right, those are card rooms, and they're just little small rooms. But the wood floor is original in there, and it is in really good shape. And we'll see a photo of that in a minute. But we left that in place so we can match that and bring that throughout the building. In the left photo, that is the porch on the eastern side of the building that kind of overlooks the valley. Since this is a historic building, there, really wasn't any ADA access, anything like that. So what we're going to do is re-pour this cement slab, and then on the north side, add an ADA ramp to make the building more accessible for the public that uses it. And, the slab will also be on level with the entrance to the building, so it can be accessible from this whole side and just allow a lot or a wider group of people to be able to use the building and experience it. Let's see, next slide. So some of the aspects that we are restoring, the last slide was kind of things that we're replacing, but in terms of restoration, we have this left photo shows a professional art restoration company. The unit panels, they did have some water damage to them, and some of them weren't in very good shape. So they have taken those down. They are repairing ones that can be repaired that had water damage. A few were too damaged, so they are going to be replicating those, and they will blend in, perfectly with the rest. We won't be able to tell which ones are replicas and which ones are original. We're taking that level of time and care to make sure that this is done right, because we really care about this building and what it represents for the Guard. You can also see in the background of that unit crest photo some more of the rock work, and then in the left side of that photo is one of the fireplaces in the bar room. So you can just see the artistry and the mason work that really went into this building is really, really cool. Let's see, the top right photo is the front of the building. So we will be putting on a new roof. This is not original. The original cedar shakes have been replaced many years ago, but the roof we will be putting on is a synthetic material that looks like cedar shakes, but doesn't have, the heavy maintenance that those cedar material does. So it'll be aesthetically pleasing and look like the original without a whole lot of the maintenance to go with it. And this bottom right photo is a small area of the original floors that the contractor has cleared off. So you can see kind of the grayish color surrounding it. That's all carpet glue from when they installed carpet over these floors. They cleaned it up and they look amazing. They look brand new. So we were able to find modern wood floors that match these pretty much exactly. So those floors will be installed throughout the rest of the building, so it will look as if the original floors flow throughout the whole thing. And really, our goal with this is, not only continued use, but what better way to interpret the past than to have this amazing building that people can use every day and just have its presence be part of the interpretation of being at Camp Williams and of this military history. So let's go to the next slide. So one of the other ways that we are interpreting the Officers Club is we have developed a little booklet to go with it. It shows all of the historic photos we have, historic photos of Camp Williams, along with all of these newer renovation photos to really tie together this story of camp and the Officers Club and how this has been a symbol of Camp Williams for so long. We are almost finished with this. We're waiting to get a few more cool renovation photos to add in there. But if anyone is interested in a copy, let me know and I can send those to you. We will also have these available at the Officers Club for anybody that visits there. Next slide. So leading away from the Officers Club, but still at Camp Williams, we have a couple other interpretive projects we're working on right now that we are really excited about. Both of these projects have to do, well, they are in reaction to demolition of historic buildings at Camp Williams. So if we demolish, an eligible historic building, we have to do something to make up for it. So this first project are interpretive displays that we are designing for one of our larger buildings at Camp Williams. This building, soldiers are going through there every day. It gets a lot of use. So this is a really high traffic area for us to get these interpretive displays in. And really what they will focus on, you can kind of see here, they wrap around the room and they'll go, chronologically through from left to right. We have information on National Guard history and Camp Williams history, but we also made sure to incorporate what this area was used for before Camp Williams, before the Utah National Guard got there. So we will have information on the geology, paleontology of the area to, the first Native American and human inhabitants. We have pioneer sites on camp. And then, it'll move through and get to the Utah National Guard history from the very beginning all the way through today. So it'll give visitors an idea of, the whole scope of the area and what it's used for from day one to now and into the future. And if we go to the next slide, these are just a couple examples of some of the artifacts we will have on display as part of this interpretive center. Most of these are from the Military Museum at Fort Douglas. That museum is run by the Utah National Guard. So we are going to get a lot of our artifacts from there on loan. You can see here in the top left is a sample of petrified wood. We have a pretty big trunk of petrified wood at Camp Williams, so we're going to use that. Some unit flags, a World War I helmet, some 75 millimeter shells that are certified inert. They won't explode. They are empty. But we're going to have we're going to have cases for each display to complement the text and have really cool artifacts. You'll be able to see how the uniforms and the technology has changed over time as, the military has grown and adapted to all these different wars and different technologies. So the next slide is the other really cool project that we are starting to work on is a walking tour of Camp Williams. So currently we have signs for some of our historic buildings and some of our historic features. You can see here the big photo on the left is a rock-lined irrigation ditch. They planted Siberian elms in the mid-30s, I believe, and those trees are still there. This ditch, watered those trees. So we have signs for those. We have howitzers and Jeeps on display. We have the recreation hall on the upper right-hand side that we're going to incorporate. We're also incorporating quite a few of our other historic buildings and amphitheaters that we have on camp. So really, it'll just tie together some of what we're already interpreting and other things that don't have any interpretation yet. So visitors and people that work at camp can take this tour and learn about the buildings that are around them and not just have it kind of, thrown out there individually. It'll be a holistic tour of all the features at Camp Williams. And the next slide. So really our goal with the Officers Club and all of our different interpretive projects is to educate soldiers and employees that are there at camp every day of the history that's around them. Some of it they can still see, through the buildings and features. Some of it is there, but they just can't see it, like Native American archaeological sites, pioneer sites, and just the geological history of the area. We want people that visit here to appreciate it and to know all the history of it. So yeah, we are really excited about it. And I'm sure as these projects progress, we'll be back out here to give everybody an update on them. But that is all I have. Thank you guys very much.
Maya, can I jump in for a second? You did have a question from Rick Matthews. He wanted to know if that part of the base was open to the public. And I just wanted to make sure we circled back with that one.
Yeah, so for Camp Williams, we do have a security gate, but all you need is a valid government ID. So I mean, you know, with Dugway and Hill Air Force Base and Tooele, they are more strict with who can access. But for Camp Williams, if you have a valid government ID, you know, like a driver's license, something like that, you can access Camp Williams.
Great, thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. This is Anya Kitterman. I'm the Cultural Resource Manager here at Hill Air Force Base, as well as for the Utah Test and Training Range, which is about 1 million acres over in the West Desert. So today we're going to kind of look at one of those things. We realize, especially at Hill and the UTTR, how restricted our resources are, our cultural resources. We have some pretty amazing cultural resources out there that we really just don't have many opportunities for folks from outside to be able to come in and see. And so we continually kind of look for new opportunities and ways in which we can kind of get these resources out to the public. Recently, we received an amazing opportunity from the Hill Aerospace Museum to produce some virtual reality exhibits for a couple of our significant prehistoric sites out on the range. And that was an opportunity we just couldn't really pass up. This is a great chance. So if we go ahead and get to the next slide, this will just kind of show you kind of what we're looking at. And really this came about is we realized that we, as an installation, are managing these lands for peoples who have been here prior to us. So our first kind of call to action was actually to coordinate with our tribal partners and get their input on this. First, were they even interested in having something like this out there? Were there sensitive materials that they prefer not to have, or sensitive information they prefer not to have? But most importantly, if we go forward with this, could they provide a perspective, their viewpoint, their story to be a part of this, this exhibit? And so fortunately, we reached out to all of our 21 consulting tribes and received responses back from several of them with really encouraging support for this project and a lot of information that we've included. So I will give a quick note that you'll see some of this language up here. We are still finalizing these exhibits, and the language right now is near final, but not quite final. We're going out to all of our tribal partners one more time to get a chance to look at this language and verify that it really encompasses their story and their viewpoint, as well as kind of that archaeological history that goes along with these sites. But this is what you'll be able to kind of see. I've got a few kind of quick candid shots of what these are going to look like. And so this is the opening shot for Beacon Village rock ring site, which contains about 15 rock rings on this hillside. And so you'll open up to a page like this where you'll get to see the site overview, get a good idea of what it looks like. And then all those little points that you see, those kind of arrows that you see pointing down, are where you'll be able to dive a little deeper and get a little more detailed information about each of these, or not each of the rings, but several of the rings and this area. So if we could go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is that more detailed look at what we're doing. And again, you'll see there's several different points you'll be able to interact. And one of the really exciting things we want to do is we've been able to coordinate with the Natural History Museum here in Utah as well, who actually houses all of our artifact collections, including those from this site. And we are coordinating with them right now to actually get some imagery of those to insert into here. So you'll actually be able to pull up some of the artifacts that were found at these at this location and interact with that as well. And again, a lot of this information and the text did come from tribal partners, as well as from that archaeological study that we've been doing on these locations. Our next slide is this is our other site. This is our Snoopy Rock Shelter rock art site. And it's a fairly small site with only a few figures, but it's also one of our most significant. And so we wanted to be able to bring this both out to the public. But one of the important things is we have a lot of folks from our tribes who want to be able to visit these, but these locations are not easy to access, not just because of security reasons, but like this site is actually up a fairly steep hill with a lot of screed and all sorts of stuff. So it doesn't make it easy just to get to. And so being able to do a virtual visit will allow tribal members as well as members of the public to be able to visit these really key and significant locations and sites. And so it's been a very exciting project to be a part of. And this is again one you'll be able to visit the different areas of the panel. This one has a lot of interpretation that has been done by the Paiute tribe of Utah, and a lot of the language you'll see is what they provided us. And so again, it's been a great collaboration between a whole host of different people to be able to bring these exhibits about and really have them be accessible not only to the public, but to our tribal partners as well. And so I am going to, at this point in time, go ahead and pass the mic, so to say, over to Camille Hazeldine and Elizabeth Shikrala, who've been doing a lot of the background work on these, on the development actually of the exhibit and done a lot of the coordination. So I will give them a chance to speak now and tell you about kind of the technical side of things.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm Camille Hazeldine. I work at the Hill Aerospace Museum. And I had the super awesome opportunity to actually go to these sites and take the photographs and put them together into virtual tour and virtual reality. And like she says, you know, this is a restricted area for not easy access. And so it was really awesome for me to go and to be able to photograph it. But one of the challenges that I came upon while making these and taking the photographs is that, you know, these are really hard to see, like the pictographs and like the rock rings. They're just kind of level, they're flat, or the pictographs are faded. So that is one of the interesting things that we had to work with when we were taking these photos, with like how to angle the camera and where to angle the camera, how to take the photos and what we needed to include and what not to include. So it was really interesting. But honestly, this process of making virtual tours are really easy. It's a very easy software, very easy camera, and working with Elizabeth and Anya has been super fantastic. They've been great providing me the information to upload into the tour and telling me how they want it to look and to design it. And so it's been a really fantastic opportunity to be able to take something that I was able to see and experience and be able to turn it into a digital media so that everyone can experience this really awesome site that I had no idea was in Utah. So it's been really cool to work on this, and hopefully soon we'll be able to give access to the public.
Yeah, it's been awesome to be able to work on this project and take it out from behind the fence, so that people can actually interact with it and see it, but do it in a manner that is both safe for the site itself and safe for the visitors. And so getting to work with all these different groups of people with all these different perspectives and ideas about what it is, it's been a really fascinating process to put it all together and just see what it means to people.
So Camille, I think you just got a question that just popped up. It says, what VR tool are you using, and will the tour be available online?
Yeah, so for this virtual reality and for the ones I'm doing for the Hill Aerospace Museum, I'm using a software called 3D Vista. It's fantastic. I compared a bunch of different virtual reality softwares, and for me, this one was the best one with the most options and features. Will this tour be available online? We are still figuring that out. I think Anya's working with that. But yeah, and like with this tour, I just used my phone and took these photos. But we recently purchased like a 360 camera, super fantastic, takes great quality photos. So the 3D Vista software works with anything, whether it's photos from your phone or like a digital camera or a really fancy camera. It works with anything.
Yeah, as Camille said, we're still kind of coordinating and looking into that online option. We have other kind of security restrictions and such at different times. And so I think that's going to be kind of more, once we get the tour kind of fully up and running for the Aerospace Museum, we can then look at, is this something we can also offer online? It's definitely something I would love to be able to do. So folks that are not able to even get here to the Air Force Base hopefully will be able to access it, but that is still in discussion and has a little bit more kind of security questions and answers that we have to answer before we can decide on that option. But we will hopefully, as Maia said with hers, hopefully as things move forward, we'll be able to keep everyone updated and get the word out to what is accessible and how. And so if we kind of go on to the next slide, that's all I actually had, but kind of from the cultural resource archaeology side. But I can now pass the mic over to Aaron Clark from the Hill Aerospace Museum, and he can tell you about other ways that we're really trying to bring some of our Air Force history out to the wider public and do so in a really creative, amazing ways.
Thanks, Anya. Hello, everyone in the virtual world. My name is Aaron Clark. Anya said, I am the director of the Hill Aerospace Museum. I've been the director here for about 8 years now. And for those of you who haven't been to this museum, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it real quick. So a lot of people come here, they think that we're just another Air Force museum just to talk about the Air Force. In fact, we're not. We're actually Air Force Field Museum who's here to talk specifically about the history of Hill Air Force Base and Utah aviation. We're really that focused, and there's really that much, that diverse and rich of a history that merits this collection and this museum. In fact, we're the second largest Air Force Field Museum in the country. We have about 90 aircraft. We encounter about 250,000 visitors a year on average. We have a pretty robust education program with over 10,000 participants a year. But going back to the initial slides from the 75th side, our installation side, and the title there, Interpreting the Past While Looking to the Future. That's something we think about quite a bit here, because not only are we supposed to preserve these artifacts, we're supposed to use these artifacts in such a way that we're educating and inspiring the airmen of tomorrow, whether that's civilian or military. We really want to get people interested in aviation. So we're really trying to grapple with the concept, the idea of how do we do this with what we have, right? How do we make this fun? How do we make this engaging? How do we do that? I mean, one of the most common questions we get at this museum is, I want to get in an aircraft. I want to touch an aircraft, but we can't let them do that because these aircraft are part of the national collection. So we try to get a little creative. So the first thing you see here is this VR thing we've done in the museum. Now, VR is nothing new, but we had to shift to this virtual offering because we had no choice. COVID was kind of forcing our hand to make. We were always trying to make a virtual shift, but COVID forced that. So we went from a glacial shift to kind of a blitzkrieg, a super quick shift to the virtual realm. Also, the tech is where we want it now. It wasn't always so user friendly, or the footprint was actually kind of large. So now we've gotten to the point where we feel comfortable with the tech. And also, there's huge generational differences in learning or ways they'd like to learn. We've come to find out at this museum. So the first thing you see here is these folks participating in VR. What they're actually experiencing is not computer generated images or anything like that. We actually work with a local unit here on Hill Air Force Base to put cameras throughout the cockpits of aircraft. And right here, these individuals are using an A-10, they're going through an A-10 experience. So we have a pilot that flies an A-10 take off at Hill Air Force Base. They fly around the West Desert, they do maneuvers, and they do a bunch of other things. And we get these folks in the seat there with these VR units, and they get to experience it. And it's just an awesome experience. And I think it hits home with a lot of people in Utah because that's what they see every day. Now they're seeing it from a different perspective, and that gets them really excited. It's cool to see. And so we've started with this first offering with the A-10, and we're going to move on to the F-16 next. And we're moving on to the F-16 because there's just been such an awesome reaction to this VR experience. It's really quite phenomenal. It really puts you into the pilot seat of our Hill Air Force Base pilots and lets you encounter what they're feeling. And in fact, I can't even fly it because I get sick. So that's one thing we're doing to try to give them the pilot's perspective and immerse them in Hill's missions. Next slide. Okay, the second thing we're doing, and this aligns exactly with what Anya's doing with those really neat sites out in the West Desert. So as you guys heard, Camille works at the museum here, and she actually started on an internship at this museum. So if you guys are ever interested in internships, please apply. We have paid internships, 15 a year. Go to our website, aerospaceutah.org, and apply for an internship. But she started here through an internship. And the old intent was to increase accessibility and education of the collection. Again, this was kind of driven by COVID, expedited by COVID. But like everybody wants to get in our aircraft. Everybody wants to learn more of our aircraft, but we have a really hard time doing that on site because A, they're not allowed into it, and B, we're really limited on how much we want to convey to them, so we don't do an information overload dump on them. So working with Camille and working with this VR technology, we've been able to provide new and greater access to our collection to anyone around the world. You don't even have to visit this museum. And in fact, this type of access has never been granted before. The things you can see and learn have never been provided to the public before. It's really quite phenomenal. And it's the same technology we're using with Anya. And you guys can go on our website and check out these tours right now for the B-17 and the C-140 presidential aircraft. Now, if you go to the next slide, what you can see here is different shots or different experiences as you're walking through these aircrafts. The way Camille has set it up is you can walk on the exterior of these airframes, and then you can enter the interior of these airframes. And on either the exterior or the interior, there's what we call hot spots, where you can click and learn more. Like the bottom right, you can see the Bombardier. That's from the B-17. You can learn more about the Bombardier position, or any other position for that matter. The top left, you have a little information icon there. That's called a Norden bomb site. That was a highly advanced targeting tool during World War II. While you're exploring these aircraft, you can learn more about them and get inside of them virtually, which, like I said, we haven't been able to do before. And let me say, these screenshots really don't do the product justice for we have this museum or for what Anya has. You really have to get into it to experience it. And I recommend you guys go to our website and check it out, because you can, no kidding, truly do a 360-degree experience inside of these airframes. So it's pretty cool. And the intent here is to do it for every aircraft in the collection that has ties to Hill Air Force Base or Utah Aviation. And then we're going to take it a step further. And I haven't provided a slide on this, but we're taking it a step further. We're working with another intern, and we're going to actually take artifacts within these spaces, or exhibits for that matter, and then do their own little 3D VR experience with just the artifacts, so you can explore it even more. So I think it's really cool stuff that's going on here. And kudos to Camille for helping us out with this. And I'll pass Mike to Camille for a second to see if she has any input or any insight into the process that she wants to share with the group when it comes to creating these products for the museum.
So yeah, just kind of the same process with the rock rings, but especially with the aircraft, it was a lot more interesting to figure out how I wanted to photograph. Because like for the B-17, you had to cross a catwalk or whatever to get to the pilot section. You had to go under things. The C-140, it was very dark inside, so we had to figure out lighting. But it gave an opportunity to figure out like what was best for that specific aircraft. And it really helped you kind of get to know the aircraft. And so that's kind of the goal of these virtual tours, is to allow visitors to not only be able to see the aircraft like in person or online on the exterior view, but able to go inside and see what it was like for the people who were flying them and working in them, and to get to experience it how they experienced it, and to learn their roles and the positions, And as we get further into these virtual tours, as I figure out different options on these virtual tours, we hope to include more personal stories from volunteers or from local heroes. So it's been really fantastic working with these aircraft because they are just so unique and very, they have individual personalities. I like to think of it that way. And so it's been fun to be able to put into these virtual tours what these aircraft are and what they did in history, especially when it comes to Utah.
Thanks, Camille. Well, Elizabeth, that's all we have here at the museum, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I think a lot of the questions are about when the VR will be complete. People are really excited about the VR. Also on Facebook, we had a couple of folks asking about the VR as well. Did you guys mention what you're using to create the VR? Someone mentioned something called Brink. That is
VR, the VR in the aircraft that are in the collection, or the VR in the aircraft that are actually flying in the sky?
I suppose both.
So Camille's already talked about the equipment, the hardware and software she's using for the static aircraft that we have in the collection. Camille, do you want to say that one more time, what you're using?
Yeah, that software is 3D Vista.
3D Vista. Very cool.
And you can actually use your phone to take those pictures, but like Camille said, we actually bought a camera specifically for doing this, and it's really not very expensive.
Yeah, the images are really crisp and clear. So I think whatever the investment was, even light though it may be, was definitely worth it. It looks great.
Good. We price things out a little bit. So just like the investment of $1,000 in equipment and just a little bit of time spent training, you can be able to do this. And we priced out this having a third party, an external company coming in to do one of our galleries, and it came out to $25,000. And we couldn't modify the product after that. So we saw this as a much more appealing path. And when it comes to the product we're using in the aircraft, I'd have to let you know. That's aircraft approved equipment, so I'd have to figure out what it is. We don't operate it in-house. We actually have a military unit on base that has their own equipment they use to do it.
Yeah, and I'll jump in real quick. When I saw Camille come out and it was literally with, a phone on a stand, I was amazed how easy it was to get the imagery for producing such an amazing product. And so it's been so exciting to be able to actually take it forward and be able to provide our resources in this way. Again, it's almost unheard of to be able to get a lot of our cultural resources out there. And so this was really cool to be able to do this. And again, I thank the museum for providing us up the opportunity. Aaron just offered up one day and said, we could do some VR of some of your sites. And I jumped on it. And so I'm really grateful for that because it is a unique opportunity for again, all of our partners, tribal and the public, to be able to experience of all of our resources in a whole new way. So yeah, it's been a great opportunity, and I'm hoping we can continue to move forward and do some other things that way as well.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Well, is there anything that you want to bring up that maybe you didn't get a chance to? We're waiting for some folks who may or may not be typing in some questions right now. Sounds like you guys covered it all. No, this is really exciting, and man, what absolute beautiful imagery this is. What is the plane here that we're looking at? I'm not very knowledgeable myself.
That's going to be your F-35. So that's a stealth fighter, Elizabeth. So on Hill Air Force Base, they flew F-16s, which is a fourth generation fighter. They flew those for 38 years. And then just a couple of years ago, this replaced the F-16. So this is the F-35. It's a stealth fighter, whereas the F-16 wasn't.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so Hill is actually the first installation to fly the F-35s operationally. So kind of cool. They actually flew to Germany last week for a deployment.
Aaron Root asks, are these the planes that make the sonic booms in the valley?
They can make sonic booms.
There's definitely,
but they're not supposed to. What you generally hear when you hear something in the valley is they're usually out at the Utah Test and Training Range. And when they're flying out there, sometimes the wind's just perfect and you can hear that sonic boom in the valley.
Yeah, we do get some pretty loud stuff sometimes. And so, Maia, can you refresh my memory? I know that you guys are going slowly and carefully with your renovations, but when were you thinking the Officers Club might be open again?
So currently we have the Officers Club closed until the fall of this year. We're hoping it will be done before then, but we cautiously, have it till fall. But things are moving along really well. We have an excellent contractor and team that's working on it. They have been amazing to help us, or not us, to have to listen to me and all my nitpicking of what we need to keep, preserved in this building. They've been amazing. But yes, we're hoping in the fall it will be ready for events. I know people are banging down the doors to have weddings in there. That's the main thing that this building is for. So yeah, it's going along really well. And if anyone is interested in the booklets that we're putting together for the Officers Club, I will put my email in the chat. Send me an email and I will put you on a list. We are still developing these, but we're hoping to have them ready and printed probably sometime this summer. So send me an email and I'll get you on a list.
Awesome. I'm putting that in our Facebook chat as well.
Perfect.
Charles Shepard would like to know at the Officers Club if you can let us know the contractor, art specialist, mason, architect, etc. We do have some people who are professionals in the industry on here, and they might be looking for people who are qualified and doing excellent work.
Yes, you said that was Charles?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, I have lists and I will send them over to you, Charles. They have been wonderful.
Yeah, so I suppose anyone else who's on who's sort of a specialist in this area, let Maia know, and she'll be sure to get you her Rolodex. I don't know if people even still know what a Rolodex is. Like, I know
My Rolodex, yes.
Yeah, these might be like also in another museum somewhere by now, but you get what I mean.
And also, just to plug, you guys with the State Historic Preservation Office, Chris Hansen has been amazing in helping us find these people, and give recommendations for companies and just helping us. I'm not a buildings person. I'm an archaeologist by training and trade. So helping us make sure we're doing this right. It's been very helpful and much appreciated.
And about the Officers Club, point of clarification, is this also known as the chapel sometimes?
No, so there is a sunrise chapel that is, I don't know, maybe 300, 400 feet to the south of there, and that is a newer building. So the Officers Club is separate from the chapel.
Good to know. Yeah, had some question about the differences there. Great. So I'm just making sure that we're all good on Facebook. People do love what you guys have been doing here, especially the VR has gotten a lot of really positive reaction. So that's fabulous. I think we are coming up on the end of the program. So if anyone has any last minute Q&A questions, please put them in. If we don't get to them, we will definitely send around an email afterwards, answering any questions. But I just want to take a moment before we close out and thank all of our panelists. This has been so informative and so much fun, and we really appreciate you guys spending your time with us here today. So thank you all very much.